Hi. Hi on the stream. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Currency Podcast, episode 109. Um, just as a piece of information for you, it should be safe to go and watch the videos again. I've tried to fix the last couple episodes, the audio on them, so that it isn't spotty when you tune in. I understand that I have made some mistakes in the past that I feel unnecessarily guilty about. All you can do about your mistakes is learn from them. I'm just talking about that. I did upload a couple episodes where I didn't replace the audio and I was just using the Twitch stream audio, and so it was spotty. And so I'd understand probably a lot of people. You might not go to the video because you know that the audio is spotty. Spotty audio, you know that. Audi spotio. And so I've been trying to fix the audio. The video should be good so you can watch the video and it's just like normal audio and you don't have to worry about it being spotty audio. Spotty audio. Let me scintillate you with my speech and my borderline S's, my loose S's. Never really did learn how to say the S the exact right way. But I wonder if there were times in my life where I corrected it enough that, because sometimes I say an S that is a popular S, sometimes I say an S that's an alternative S.
Just absolutely
I hope that you knew that you were in for some of that, me talking about S's. Let me explain that this podcast, in some senses, is void of femininity. I think to sit around and then just talk about, like, I go into an irrational realm to say the things that I do. It's irrational as opposed to rational. And it would appear that in the world today, the thing that you should be afraid of most are the people that are speaking from an irrational standpoint or going into the irrational realm. Anybody supporting an alternative narrative. It's just that there's the default world of reality. And I would say that at this point in time, everybody is really afraid of anybody who's saying something that sounds like it departs from reality, or at least superficially this is the case. At least apparently, the way that it appears, this is the case, because it's still kind of it's cancel culture still has power at this moment. Wokeness has power. And then Elon Musk bought Twitter, and right before our very eyes we see that Twitter is becoming conservative. This is the worst fear of people on the left. Like, the left has been complaining about the right gaining power wrongfully for like 5 years. Since Trump was elected, they just all started assuming that something was rigged or something is amiss because Trump couldn't have actually been elected or whatever. And now it's like everything that the left has been complaining about is actually happening. But if you're on the left, the left shouldn't worry about this, because that's what needs to happen. The thing that you are afraid of happening, that you complain about, it's like, in my experience, there are things that I make myself a victim over, like things that I want to happen, and then I become the victim, like imagining that the worst case scenario is going to happen, like makes it so that you tend toward that worst case scenario if it's something you want. Like wanting, like being a victim, I think you become one at some point, but this is like a necessary part of the process for anybody carrying on with victimhood in any regard, is that you actually have to fall victim to the things that you are imagining you're a victim of before you can stop being a victim. And my question to myself generally is, how much of a victim do I act like I I have some things to say today, and I do question the morality of me doing this at all, making a podcast, saying what the world would deem to be unfounded things. It's not unfounded. It's just a bunch of knowledge that's specific to myself, and so it's alternative knowledge, and people are afraid of that. I would argue that, hey, it's still valid. I know that it's not popular because there are a lot of things that it's so specific to me that maybe it's like I'm the only one that's even saying it. And so when it gets that alternative, it's like, how could you describe it as something other than radical? I would say that you don't have to worry about it because I'm the one who pays the price for things like that. Like, I'm the one who, I mean, if it's like the last episode I was talking about Jews, and people are really sensitive about Jews, and so generally people, like, the populace, popularly, what I said about Jews would be interpreted as that I'm some sort of anti-Semite, even though I'm just trying to start a dialogue or something. Trying to start a negative dialogue about Jews. Not actually. I'm not trying to do that. I'm not trying to start a negative dialogue. I love Jews. Matt loves Jews. That's what your takeaway should be. Love Jews I love. But Ari Shafir, the stand-up comedian, I think he lives in Austin. Maybe not. Maybe he's from New York. I don't know much about him. Ari Shafir is a stand-up comedian, came out with a special. Joe Rogan tweeted it out because Ari Shafir is one of Rogan's best friends. He's like one of Rogan's boys that appears on his podcast. Rogan's boys are Ari Shafir, Mark Normand, and Shane Gillis. Now, he has other friends that he's better friends with, but those are Rogan's boys. Not that that is a very admirable quality. I'm just letting you know. I'm just informing you that this is going on. But Ari Shafir came out with a special a couple days ago called Jew, because he is Jewish, and the whole special is him talking about Jewish culture, growing up Jewish, because he grew up really strictly in the Jewish religion, and so it's unique. It's unique that he made this stand-up special called Jew, because that's a point in time that you can harken back to. That something like that could stand the test of time. The first person who's willing to clown on Jewishness to that degree, where they come out with a whole hour-long special where they're making jokes at the expense of Jews, and it's called Jew. That's like an important point in history. Something like that could last forever. It's a really Jewy thing to do. Whoever makes the stand-up special Jew, because it'll go on forever, kind of like the origins of Jewish culture go on forever as documented in the Bible. And like, don't be surprised that Jews are overrepresented in media, which they are. That's not like, it's not an insult, and doesn't make you hateful to just state a thing. Also, who's surprised that Jews do well with stories and narratives when the origins of their culture is the most popular narrative according to the world of all time, because it is forever remembered in the Bible, is documented in the Bible, the most popular book. And so nobody should be surprised that Jews are good in the area of narratives and that they're overrepresented in media. That just goes hand in hand with what they've already proven themselves to be able to do. But Ari Shafir is a special called Jew. Now, Ari Shafir is not, it's like, that's like a divine message. And my question in watching something like that is, I'll say this, that I wonder what happened now that did something happen now that I'm off the Korn Ferry Tour? Let me check, since I've been building up the hype about I'm going to make it to the PGA Tour. Yes, I did make the PGA Tour. Just as I said, I did not deceive you. because I just finished the last tournament, the Corn Ferry Tour, so I have a new schedule. And the new schedule is a bunch of... It's a bunch of PGA Tour shit, and none of them are majors, so that kind of blows. They're all just PGA Tour contests, championships. None of them are like the Masters. But the PGA Championship should be on here. How would PGA Tour not have authority over the PGA Championship? PGA Championship is one of the 4 majors. No, it's not on here. So, who is it that creates the PGA Championship if you can't put the PGA Championship on a PGA Tour video game? Alright, well that blows. I can win the Players' Championship, the 5th most important tournament in championship golf, Not that the stock of the PGA Tour itself is falling on its own, but, okay, so I'm starting the first tournament on the PGA Tour, and I guess I'm trying to win the PGA Tour. That is my new goal. Or maybe I'll just start playing another video game, I don't know. It's important that I win this career mode, just take my word for it. You will perceive importance into this, you will read importance into it. Just follow the sound of my voice. It is important, the things that I do. And, but anyway, I really get a kick out of the idea that you can't criticize somebody's beliefs, because you really only, it's for like, it applies to a major religion that a lot of people believe in, like a major cartel. You can't cross them. That's why you can't criticize somebody's beliefs, is only if it's Muslim. Because you can, if it's Kyrie Irving, you can criticize their beliefs pretty easily. All day you can criticize their beliefs. If it's Kyrie Irving, you can shit on him as much as you want for what he believes. And it's just kind of like, I went on the car path and my ball is rolling backward here. Ooh, that was tough. A 237-yard drive. I mean, there's only so much you can say about that. Barge Mistletoe responds in kind. He's man of the people. He matched the situation with his facial expressions and gestures quite even-handedly. He really handled that situation well. I mean, he can take a joke. He hits a bad drive. He's like, yeah, that's on me. That's on me, folks. But the thing is that, yeah, Kyrie Irving, just because he supports some alternative narratives, he's Satan. And he has to, like, my question is, why is, like, the media and the world on his case so much? Why does everybody want to cancel Kyrie? Just because he's an outlier in some areas, because of his beliefs. Like, it's really more the case that what you attack somebody for is their beliefs. Because the people that get attacked the most, that's what we're attacking them for. Like, what attacking goes on in the media that isn't about somebody's beliefs? Like, criticism itself, it's about somebody's beliefs. Even if it's an album that's being criticized, somebody believed in the things that they were saying enough to put out an album, and then there's music critics that say, no, you're shit for making this because we don't believe you. You don't have... Like, if an album is bad, it's because the world decides you don't have the authority over the things you're singing about. That's what makes for shitty music, is empty lyrics. And empty because we know they're flimsy, because you don't... Like, either empty lyrics that are meaningless, that emphasize that you have no authority, or lyrics that you act like you have the authority, but you're a poser. It's just that, like, if it's a good song, it's only good if you deserve to make the song. Like, my headset keeps turning itself off rapidly. Like, for example, I'm just saying, like, if it's a song, the song title, if you have authority over it, then it can be popular. That doesn't mean it will be, but that's a necessary criteria for you making a popular song. Take, for example, the song Anti Hero by Taylor Swift. Um, this song is really popular. People like it. It works out. I'm saying, like, in order for this to work out, she actually has to be an anti hero of some kind. Like, she has to the authority she's singing about, she actually has to have that in order for people to be like, oh, this is a great song. And it's only that authority, it's only her actually being an anti-hero that would generate her ability to write lyrics that are good about it, or lyrics that are meaningful. People would only believe it if it actually applied. And so if you write shitty songs, we criticize you for it. I mean, if you make shitty art of any kind, or even if you make tweets that are shitty, we can criticize your Twitter or anything, like the way you come across, like the way that people criticize Russell Wilson, they criticize him because they don't believe him. Or in other words, that whatever his belief system is founded on, people want to tear it apart or say that you're just a cringe lord, because whatever you've been basing your identity on is flimsy. We don't believe you. Or in other words, the belief system you're purporting to have in front of us is not believable. That is what you criticize somebody for, is their beliefs. So, but I'm saying anti-hero, it only works if Taylor Swift is some sort of anti-hero, and I would argue that she is, not entirely. The song doesn't work entirely. But it's interesting that she comes out with her best song in like 8 or 9 years at a point when Kanye West is under the gun. Now Taylor Swift comes out with like the best song she's made in 8 years. That's a strange coincidence. And the last song that she made that was as good as Anti-Hero is Blank Space, which is on the same album as Shake It Out. Shake It Out is not as good a song as Blank Space. I think we can all agree that Shake It Out is just a flaming piece of garbage of a song. Piece of shit. I would say that Look What You Made Me Do is an underrated song, but it is not as good as Anti-Hero. But it's just like, that's what's difficult about making anti-hero pop song, is that you actually have to be that. So you would think that somebody would have made that song already, but nobody did. It takes a lot of courage in Taylor Swift's position to start saying something like that, because generally the world is going to be like, you're not an anti-hero, you're not dark, you don't get to be that because you sing a lot of love songs or pop songs, like you're empty-headed. Or like, the criticism of someone like her would be like, you're just a pop star, and so what do you have to say? And so it's difficult for someone like her to say this once she's already achieved her level of popularity. So the risk that she takes in making it is part of the reason why it's rewarded by everybody at this current time. But it works for her fan base, especially. That's mostly who it works for. It doesn't work for the entire world, really, but the idea that she is an anti-hero. But let me tell you why she is an anti-hero, and that is because the human experience, as far as I can tell, unless there's something that I'm not thinking about, and I haven't thought this over completely, this example I'm about to use, but it would appear to me that the human experience for very many centuries treated love in a serious way, and then only at the point that Taylor Swift came along did love become bastardized enough that it's a little bit of a joke. Like, even in the 80s and 90s, we don't have... Even in the 80s and 90s, like, think of love songs before recent history. Most of them are all serious. You can have a love song like My Boyfriend's Back and You're Gonna Be in Trouble is from a group. It's not from a single singer. It's not a solo artist. And what I'm saying is, think of an example of a love song that's fun. And they didn't really happen, like, love songs are pretty much all serious from the 60s onward, or there's like, oh, love is so great. Taylor Swift comes along and presents bastardized version of love, and part of the evidence for why she's like the first one to do this as a solo artist, like what solo singer before her was treating love like it's just kind of fun and a joke? I'm talking about pop love. And the reason why you know that nobody was treating love like a joke in music before her, the reason you know that's true is because we don't have the term pop love or pop romance. But really, that's what she created, and that's what her legacy is the development of pop love songs. She's a pop love artist, pop romance artist. There's no pop romance because romance is supposed to be serious. It's supposed to be like heavily emotional, the same way that romanticism as a art movement in the 19th century is like characterized by emotion and, well, no, it's not. Romance romance is not serious. Romanticism was an answer to the Age of Enlightenment and to rationality. Romanticism is irrational. Romance is irrational. It's characterized by erratic behavior, emotions, and individualism. As an art, romance itself and romanticism, the artistic movement that peaked in the 19th century. And so I would argue, though, that pop romance did not exist before Taylor Swift. And so she's an anti-hero in some senses because it's not a really nice thing to do to bastardize love and make it into a fun little joke. And I'm talking about, like, just all her, that's what her songs are, is that, like, love is just kind of goofy and silly. And before that, we had 80s love songs by, like, like Celine Dion kind of love songs, or I Will Always Love You originally by Dolly Parton, like serious love songs of the 80s. Like, I think that love songs used to be more serious, but nobody says pop love or pop romance, and I think that that's what Taylor Swift creates. And so, post Taylor Swift, it's okay to treat love like it's just kind of silly and whimsical based on your own emotions, and like your own emotions aren't that great or whatever. It's kind of like saying that connectedness and love isn't that great. I think that that's what her artistic message is, and people don't realize that that is actually kind of subversive. But you would never, nobody's going to be describing it that way, because we're going to be like, she's a pop star. And I'm saying this isn't something she thought about beforehand. This is just something that results from her going out and singing whatever songs are on her mind. It's just a product of the times. Shit has to change, and we have to see love in different ways rather than always treat it as a serious thing. Yeah, I don't know. I hope you don't think less of me for having such an in-depth take on Taylor Swift's music, but if you don't think less of me by this point, you just haven't listened to enough of my podcast, really. How do you think highly of me? But, like, I'm saying I pay the price for saying anything that sounds even slightly like it's an attack on Jews, because that's isolating to me based on the way that the world interprets that, because they're so sensitive to Jews. But now we live in a post-Jew, the comedy special by Ari Shaffir world, where it's okay to be a bit more open about this conversation. And I do sort of believe that that a project that somebody makes and they put out into the world is a turning point for the way that the world is processing that thing, the way that it's titled. And because nobody, as far as I know, has made a stand-up special called Jew, and if they did, it was not very popular. And, like, if somebody made a stand-up special called Jew before Ari Shaffir, I don't think the world knows anything about it. And if that is the case, that somebody made a stand-up special called Jew, the world doesn't know anything about it, that goes to show you that the world isn't ready to overcome that thing, or say that the artist is really has the authority to talk about it. The world decides that the artist has the authority. You see that this is true if it becomes popular. And only if it becomes popular is it a thing that the world is processing, because it's popular for the surrounding world. But so
Do not buy any lottery tickets tonight. You're absolutely wrong.
anyway, so it does work on some level that she is an anti-hero. That's why she's able to make a good song about it. But I think that yes, so I would pay the price for saying that, and yeah, you can criticize whoever it is. You can criticize Kyrie Irving because he has some alternative beliefs on things. But it's like, consider this objectively. Won't you just leave this guy alone? What did he ever do to anybody that the NBA is up his ass just because of what he believes in his personal life? That doesn't make any sense. Or why does the world give a fuck? I thought that we were supposed to be accepting of everybody's beliefs or whatever. Except that that entire idea is bullshit. Because criticism, it would seem to me, is generally mostly about criticizing beliefs themselves. It's like, beliefs are what is up for debate. Nobody should be immune from that, but it's just like the largest groups of people are immune because they have a lot of power, so they're going to be like, hey, stomp out anybody who's saying that they are allowed to criticize their beliefs.
A wonderful shot and a chance for birdie here at the 7th.
Yeah, I've been to Austin, Texas.
Feet to the cup.
Joe Rogan, there's just something kind of stale about stand-up comedy, and a little bit just the way that it's presented through the example of Joe Rogan, because the new wave of stand-up is supposed to go through Austin, Texas now, because that's where the biggest movers and shakers of the industry move to, and they're creating a little stand-up world over there, which is sort of the point at which stand-up starts to make a caricature of itself. But I think that stand-up probably still has a long way to go. It probably has a good, like, 60 or 70 years in it, even if we do create the city where stand-up happens, which there isn't one of those yet, but that's what Rogan is trying to do in Austin. But there's something that has become stale about the Joe Rogan experience, and I would say that it's Joe Rogan. Just the experience of Joe Rogan is becoming stale. Like, the Joe Rogan experience of the podcast is more stale now than it has ever been during its entire run, and it's hard for anybody to put their finger on why that is. I would say it's hard for everyone to figure it out. I'll speak for everyone. It's hard for me to put a finger on why that is, why it's stale. Some of it is is that he's become a propagandizer for Austin because he wants everybody to move there to prove that he made a good decision in leaving Los Angeles in front of his friends that still live in Los Angeles. And it's kind of like the reason that anybody does anything is to prove it to their friends that they grew up with, that they look good now, or whatever, or their relatives and friends now. It's kind of like the only reason anybody does anything is to say, oh yeah, look at me, in front of their friends. And so that's why friends are a good thing, is because they push you to become better and more sociable. I don't know what percentage of it is that it's your friends that push you to do that. I think that in TV and movies, the narrative is sort of like, it's totally in and of yourself. Like, your capacity for romance pushes you to get married or whatever. Like, it's because people fall head over heels and they can't control it. And that is true. It's just that don't forget the element of it where like people get married and have families so that they can be acceptable to society, where it's like it's really makes you a lot more socially acceptable to get married at some point, even if you have to do it when you're like 30 to 40. That's why like Aaron Rodgers isn't a big marriage guy, so he has all these girlfriends his whole life,
Opting for the three
but
wood.
he even gets married by the time he's like 38, because probably just so that he is socially acceptable to people around him. He gets to stay current for the next 40 years.
Dance floor?
Uh,
Been worse.
being a married person, you get to be more current and more relevant if you're married when you're 55, or at least that you had a marriage, rather than that you never got married. In the climate that we live in, I'm not saying it's right. I'm saying it's socially acceptable to be married, and that's why you should be married. You should do it for your friends, but that's why it's good to have friends. They push you to be socially acceptable. But that's the whole point, is that if you don't have people you surround yourself with that are similar to you, then you're not being sociable. That's just the culture of friendship, is one of you make friends with people not because it's so great to be friends, but because
Par 5 here.
it is so great to help each other out towards a common goal. The goal of becoming more attractive to society. And
Line here. You should find the fairway.
why am I saying this to you? I forget exactly why, but I can't tell you what brought me here to this exact train of thought. But talking about Joe Rogan has become a propagandizer for Austin. I was watching Joe Rogan the other day, and he said the following. He said, somebody asked him about, it was Dave Chappelle and Joe Rogan, and Dave Chappelle is talking to him like he's a human being, which most of the guests on there don't hold Joe Rogan to anything. The expectation is that you just agree with Joe Rogan and laugh at his jokes and say you're really great, because he's kind of like thin-skinned like that. Dave Chappelle is actually asking him more serious questions, where it's like Joe Rogan experience has gotten stale because Rogan is just kind of coming across as fake in the last couple of years, but it's like it was at its zenith during the pandemic. Like 2 years ago, it wasn't stale at all. Now it is stale, and it's obvious that it's stale, Joe Rogan. And Dave Chappelle is asking him some questions as if he sees that this is true also. Like, he sees that it's stale, and he is asking him of like, what do you like about Austin? And Joe Rogan said, nobody is trying to be famous here. That's what he said about it. So that's a complete lie. He's totally kidding himself and anybody who believes him say that. Nobody is trying to be famous in Austin in the year 2022. That's complete bullshit. I went there and I know everything about it because I was there for a few days.
This one might need to get down.
So, wow, I've hit the pin more than once in this round. I'm really good at this setting that is sort of simple.
Right at it.
I'm really good.
Sitting at
Really good at this golf video game. Holy shit, I'm good at it. Oh my god, this career mode that you can create the settings and do whatever, control it in whatever way that you want, basically. You can make yourself a winner at any point. Talking about success and what it takes to be successful, but I don't want to go this whole hour without mentioning this. I saw a TikTok the other day, and it was somebody from Barstool because the Barstool logo was there. I don't know who it was. I guess if you're an employee for Barstool, you just get to attach the Barstool logo to your TikTok or any content that you're making. Also, what's going on with that organization at this time? I heard that Portnoy sold off all of the stock and is now getting out of New York City.
a few shots.
And what is the company without Dave Portnoy? I'm a little bit confused. Is it just a bunch of disconnected podcasts? Like, I'm not saying that the future is like the future still looks positive for Barstool. I'm just a little confused about what's going on with their sporadic disintegrated talent that's just like these people are doing this podcast and people are doing this over here. If Portnoy isn't the Christ figure heading it all up, what does that organization become? Like, he sold all the stock. Is he getting out of the company? But I do see him on one of the podcasts. Like, he's still doing that actively. So it's like, I think he's not saying I'm not going to participate in the company anymore. But, like, anyway, somebody from Barstool, I don't know who it was, made this TikTok where they were in their car and they were blocking this, like, they were blocking this lane on the freeway because it's like an emergency lane, or it's just some extra lane that you're not supposed to use under normal circumstances. And there's a traffic jam, and there are all these cars using this extra lane, but they weren't supposed to. And this guy from Barstool got into the lane and put his car there so that nobody could use the lane anymore, like, illegally. And he made this TikTok while he was doing it, and he was like, follow the rules. It's important to follow the rules. Like, as if this is canon for everybody that walks the entire earth. So follow the rules, people. I think it literally said follow the rules on the screen. And it had 1 million likes by the time that I saw it. And that should come as no surprise to anybody. It's really just kind of like Barstool Sports and following the rules. If anybody combines those two factors in a TikTok they make, that's what people like. I think it's like, oh, a rule follower. But I say that because Barstool Sports, I watch Part of My Take. I feel like Big Cat and PFT are always talking about the importance of following the rules, and they're always shitting on anybody who doesn't. Like it's almost like a Christian perspective or something. Like the way that they treat Urban Meyer, for example, just because he got a lap dance once. He's just sinner number one. He's the chiefest of sinners. He's the Apostle Paul. Or whatever it is. You know, how the Apostle Paul is the chiefest of sinners. Urban Meyer is the Apostle Paul because he got a lap dance at the Urban Meyer Pine House. And some of it is that Big Cat is a Wisconsin Badger fan, and he's one of these Badger fans that hates Ohio State beyond... They're just hates Ohio State, doesn't care about the Big Ten Conference. Like, you can be a Wisconsin fan and have an admiration for Ohio State because you like the conference. This is the kind of fan that I am. I like Ohio State and I like Michigan and I like Wisconsin because I'm like a Big Ten Conference fan. But then there's Wisconsin fans that are just like, I hate Ohio State no matter what. And that's the kind of fan that Big Cat is, so... He capitalizes off of the fact that you get better ratings when you follow the rules. I'm saying that Big Cat knows what he's doing, and he knows that you're going to get better ratings because one of the demographics you know will always be there is Christian people, and America is a very Christian nation, and you're not going to get good ratings if you cross Christianity, and Big Cat knows this, and he's really good at getting ratings, and like he has his finger on the pulse of popularity, and so he is often emphasizing that it's important to follow the rules. And I think they shit on Kyrie Irving, though I'm not remembering that they do for sure, but I think they do, but they just, like, they hate Urban Meyer, and they hate people who don't follow the rules, and they just want to support, like, whatever is popular on Twitter is the opinion that they have also. And I don't know, in the Elon Musk Twitter, we have a new set of things that's happening, and so it's like different. We're gonna have a new Twitter on our hands. And it's really like, I think the left does have an argument at the point that this happens, that Elon Musk controls Twitter, and he's making it this individualistic thing. He's making it into a conservative platform. I think the left is right about that. It does become conservative at the point that Elon Musk owns it. And Like, you can't just pass it off as nothing that Elon Musk is like asking you to pay $8 a month, but all of like the Donald Trump Juniors of the world are like, oh yeah, it's time to pay $8, just the way it was always supposed to be. Like, quit whining and complaining about it. Like, don't act like it's nothing that you're a Twitter employee and you get laid off. Like, everybody on the right now has this self-righteousness, like, yeah, you should get laid off. Look at the backbone of America, like steel workers, or look at jobs you could have that are much worse than this. You could be in that position. Or like, everybody on the right is like, yeah, you do have to come into work because it's hard to work. So stop complaining. Like, everybody on the right gets self-righteous at the point that Elon Musk owns Twitter. And I would say that that's the point where the right stops becoming the counterculture, where I'd say that they are the counterculture now. But you stop becoming the counterculture at the point that, like, conservatism starts to control media. And that does happen at some point, I guess. I think it used to be more... The media used to be more conservative. And, I don't know, if the left becomes a counterculture, I wonder if that just turns me into a liberal or something. Like, I always hate the rule followers, but rule following is always the popular thing, is what I'm saying. It's always what surfaces, because in order to be successful, you have to follow the rules. It goes back to what I'm saying about marriage. You follow the rules more if you're somebody who gets married and align with customs. You have to be, I mean, not customs, maybe, that's not the right word. Conduct. In line with conduct that's generally socially accepted. If you follow more of those rules, you'll become more popular, the same way as you'll, like, work your way up the corporate ladder. If you follow the rules more, you'll surface more, you'll become more visible. The people who win are the people who follow the rules the most. That's what winning is for, and so Big Cat and PFT are like major winners in relative comparison to anybody else on the earth. You know, like the success that they've had is so successful. You do not get to be as successful an organization as Barstool is out of nowhere unless you're a bunch of people really committed to following rules of some kind. And I know that it's like, it runs counter to what you'd think because Barstool got to where they are because they broke all the rules or whatever. It's complicated. It's both of them, you know, but like, of course, all you have to do is combine Barstool and following the rules. I commented on that TikTok, you're a piece of shit, because you're like, I hope nobody died today when you blocked the emergency lane. I hope nobody needed to go to the hospital while you made at this point to be self-righteous and decide the rules for everybody else. Like, that's the worst kind of person. Like, you're just going to take morality into your own hands, decide morality for anybody who might have an emergency. But everybody liked it because they think it's really bold to make a stand for following the rules, when actually it's quite the opposite. It's actually very... It's what you think it is. It's ass-kissing to follow the rules. But just the self-righteousness to say that I get to decide, I feel like that's just unfortunately becoming the character of Barstool. It's just a bunch of rule followership. And like, that's evidence for you that Christians run the world, is that we get on anybody who's a sinner. And when is it ever okay to be drunk? Never. Never. Never is it okay to be a drunk person. That's always criticized. You can always shit on drunkenness or somebody who is drunk. Being somebody who's sober, somebody on the outside, always has the moral high ground over a drunk person. It is never okay to be drunk. That's how you know that Christians run the world. Is it ever like a positive thing, net, like ultimately, objectively, to be drunk? It isn't, because drunk is an alternative perception. It's an alternative perception to the default perception, the mainstream perception of like sobriety, of just reality. Like being drunk or being high, these are different. These are alternate realities. Uh, they're alternate narratives, and they're alternate planes of existence. And so you're supporting an alternate narrative. It's just like that is a different world. That is a different reality, the world of being drunk. And that's why it is criticized. But literally, the only reason you can ever be drunk is because it's really popular to be sober. Because that's what most people are. But that's all criticism is directed at people supporting an alternative reality. For example, like look at being drunk or being high, a couple things you can look to that are continually chastised. Like no matter what, it's always shitty to be high. It's just because most people aren't high. Most people are sober. That's the thing that most people are. And it's really just you have the moral high ground if you're supporting what is the majority, if you're supporting what's popular. Morality is popularity, basically. And
The mark on that approach.
like Christians around the world, you see that drunk is never good. But like the thing about drunk is beer drinking lasts through the centuries. It never goes away. It goes hand in hand with the human experience. Humans are always drinking across all cultures. Alcohol is always there. And it's like it can't be defeated. Like it's almost like it exists forever, kind of like Jesus does or something, even though it's a counter to Jesus. It's an anti-Jesus of sorts. And the idea of anti-hero is an anti-Christ or something. Like anti-heroes are anti-Christian. Like for example, probably the most famous anti-hero in pop culture is Walter White from Breaking Bad. He's not very Christian. That's what an anti-hero is somebody who is a sinner, somebody who's an anti-Christian. And I say that to mention that anti-Christian is not what you ever would get to call that. Anti-hero is as far as we've gotten in describing that idea, because the world is run by Christians and Christianity is petrified of speak of anti-Christianity anywhere, because they're always paranoid that the Antichrist is about to rise. And anybody who's very much a sinner, Christianity is going to start to label as the Antichrist. And they have enough power that the rest of the world will be convinced into thinking that is something to be afraid of. But it's like, for some reason, pop culturally, the world does know about what Antichrist means. Because like, the world knows what that is, even though they're not like
Not a good leave.
in a position to say that it's something that's happening. But like,
Yes, very smooth tempo there on that chip.
why does drunkenness persist through the centuries for humans is a good question to ask. Like, it can't be defeated, it continues on and on. Part of the reason, I think that when something lasts forever, when it keeps going on, the reason it goes on, you can see, is because people are only ever seeing it on one side of a two-sided coin, where the two sides are positive and negative. If something keeps lasting forever, it's because people are only ever seeing it continually as positive or continually as negative, and not enough awareness is happening for people to see the other side of the coin. Like, for example, if people understood Christianity to be negative, that would defeat Christianity. But Christianity already describes itself this way in the Bible by saying that in the end times, the Antichrist will rise. Or in other words, the story that generates Christianity, the Bible, it ends in Revelation. This story ends at the point that anti-Christianity arises. Like, the Bible already self-describes itself this way. Like, this story ends at the point that the other side of it becomes this big thing, like anti-Christianity. But notice how anti-Christianity really doesn't have a place in the world because nobody's like seriously describing this. And so, but like Jordan Peterson, for example, is an antichrist figure because he's spewing all of this pseudo Christianity. But like, that's what I'm saying is that anti-Christian isn't a term, so nobody can even describe him as this, and that's like to the detriment of Christianity. And I would say Kanye is a little bit of an antichrist figure as well. And so, is it pseudo-Christianity? But anyway, so Christianity like persists forever because it's only like, popularly speaking, it's interpreted as positive. Nobody's ever like, this is a negative thing. Same with the Bible, like popularly, there's no anti-Bible, you know. But like, the same goes true for something that through the ages is interpreted or perceived to be negative, like alcohol. And the thing is that we are in a
Just 3 feet to the cup.
my dog Ziggy is on hand. Here he is. Oh, no, I can't move this. You see him? I can only move this so far because the cord is the cord isn't very long, but like,
Let's head to the next.
alcohol is only ever seen as negative. It's always, you always have the moral high ground over a drunk person because, popularly speaking, most people aren't drunk. And so we can always criticize the alternate reality, the world that you go into. Because I'd say it is like you become a different person for any one drug that you're taking. If you get high, if you take LSD, you become a different person, a person specific to LSD, under the influence of LSD. If LSD is the thing that you took, that's a specific different person that you become. I think it is that way. It is a completely different reality. You become a different person under the influence of whatever given drug. And all of those things are alternative narratives to the main narrative, the one that we describe as reality. And currently in today's world, all of a sudden it's become a very terrifying thing if you're a person talking about things that exist out of reality or that exist irrationally. And like, I just have a lot of things to say right now. I have a lot of things to say. Man, I didn't even get to any of the good ones. I suck. Everybody's just gonna think that I'm criticizing rule following immediately, and they're gonna think that I'm horrible. I wanted to mention that what I'm saying right now is that drunkenness is positive, but nobody is like it. Alcohol exists forever and ever because we're never willing to have a serious conversation about the positives of being drunk when it's like it's only ever seen as belligerent, or it impairs your mind, or it impairs your vision, and it makes you silly or whatever. Like, you can always shit on it by bringing up the stereotypes about it that just exist on the surface. Like, the stereotypes of the negatives about it. You can always criticize anybody who's drinking. And it's like, things swung back around in the world where now we're like, oh, drinking alcohol is bad. Like, as if we're all making an effort to end drinking alcohol because we realize how unhealthy it is. Like, this is the last stand. Maybe we'll give up alcohol for good. When in reality, this is just a moral thing, and it's just a criticism of the culture of drinking. It's just backlash from rule followers saying alcohol is bad. Alcohol is no worse than it's ever been, and people aren't going to stop drinking it into the future any more than, like, they're going to keep drinking it at the same rate. Doesn't matter that we've all decided it's unhealthy or whatever. Like, but Adele made a song called I Drink Wine because she's a pop artist and countercultural and a fuck you kind of person. Like, she made that song recently, and I would say that not that the song is so much about like a stand of it's okay to drink, but she's basically just saying like, yeah, I like to drink wine, so that's still okay. But anyway, like the positives of being, there are positives of being drunk, but it's like it makes you more lovely in some senses, even though you're only ever allowed to say that it's the opposite of that. It makes you shitty. It makes you angry. It's like actually in most cases of drunkenness, the person that's drunk is kind of more fun to be around, and they're more open, and they're less inhibited. And there's positives of that, like you get to share more of yourself when you're drunk. Like there's all these positives about it, but it's only ever like, oh yeah, it's shit. The person who's drunk is just the one making an asshole out of themselves. When in reality, but this is the same world that says that love is the greatest value, and the acceptance of love is only what's going to cause you to progress into the future. Like, in some senses, drinking alcohol makes you more loving and more open to having sex and connecting with people. Like, it's so much more connecting to drink alcohol. But yet, in this world where we say that love is the greatest value, those same people are like, oh, being drunk is always shitty. But this is why it never goes away. It's because it's only like, we're never willing to say that it is this positive thing, or like accept it as it is, as if it was a person or something. Like the idea of it is never accepted fully. We just say that it's a bunch of stereotypes that like we're allowed to call you an idiot or call you a sinner. And it's just, you're allowed to call somebody a sinner if they are participating in an alternate, in a reality that's less popular, like if you're high. Because that plane of existence doesn't have as much credibility or validation, if fewer people are doing it. But wow, it's warm in here. I'm getting heated, getting heated up. So like Joe Rogan's stale ass Joe Rogan. Like everyone who's going to, like, Austin, Texas is the place to go to become famous in this year. Of course, people are trying to be famous there, but Joe Rogan is acting like everybody's just chewing on a blade of grass. Like Austin, Texas is in the middle of some prairie or something. Nobody's trying to be famous here. Yeah, Austin, Texas only has like 100 people in it. Not a very high population. It's just kind of like Little House on the Prairie down there, basically. Everybody's just laid back. That's such bullshit. But it's isolating to me. Like, that is cause for feeling ashamed and separate from the rest of the world when you don't follow the rules, when you say things that are interpreted popularly, like things that are known to be unpopular. That's just going to make you separate. I pay the price for saying those things. And so I really have to think about, like, I mean, like, I can't just do a diatribe like a conservativist, like, pro-individual diatribe all the time. I can't be that person all the time, nor do I want to be. Individualism is not good all the time, especially not for me, even though, like, I'm pretty much always trying to advocate for that. Like, it's important to share your original messages, but it's like, I can't do that all the time because it really would take a toll, me arguing for, because arguing for individualism is like arguing for isolationism, and what that results in for me is I become isolated. But okay, so Jordan Peterson, yeah, I don't know. I wish that maybe I talked more about whatever I was saying, like, I fell into similar narratives that I often say, but like a victim. Like, I grew up really Christian, and
Outstanding approach shot.
it causes me to think for some reason that I'm a victim of Christianity or something, like where I believed all these things like, as long as I am in a position where I'm blaming my narrative on Christianity still, I'm still a victim of Christianity, and I'm still like,
Made it. Off to a
I still
great
succumb
start
to it, and I'm still subject to
Absolutely
it.
love
Where
to
I'd
see
say that
those get
Christianity is like a
early.
drug,
Sets the tone for the rest of
really.
the day.
It's a drug that you can be on, and it's a dangerous one
with an underpass
that
score.
a lot of people are
I can't
perfectly
ever
willing to be
recall
drugged
making a
out
birdie
on
and feeling bad about
24/7.
it. So yes, birdie
It's
on the
like,
first. Great job.
please consider the
All those
consequences
positives
of
coming
something
from
like
birdie.
that.
Let's see
It's
what
not good
happens
to be a
here.
Christian all the time. Like adherence to one specific drug over abundance of one thing that you're influenced by. That's like 24/7 dependence on a drug isn't good. Like, things are better in moderation.
Oh, great swing there.
So it's not good to be that every day, especially when, like, that's the thing about it, is that Christianity calls you to be that all the time, no matter what. And Jordan Peterson is an Antichrist figure. I was watching a video of him
Same spot as
where
yesterday, looking for the same result
he's
today.
making these videos where he's like, this is a video for all Muslims. This is a video for all Christians. Which, it's like, you're obviously overstepping your bounds to make this video, but that's kind of the point, is that it's expected of everybody that they're not going to make a YouTube video that says, this is me calling out all Christians. Like, but Jordan Peterson is like, it is okay to do that now. This is the modern age, bitches. I'm going to call out an entire religion on my own. And he made this one that's like a message to Christians, like it's the letter to Ephesus or something, a letter to the churches. It's a little bit like that. Literally, it's like that. Where like the seven churches that I think Paul wrote the letters to,
Pretty good hole.
This one here,
as
this
is
is for
described in
back-to-back
Revelation, I
birdies,
believe.
moving him in the right direction.
Those were like the seven of the most important churches of the ancient world, or whatever. That was like Christianity for the world at that point. And like the letters to the churches outlined in Revelation is kind of like calling out all Christianity at that point in time. Jordan Peterson is doing that
Well, that's a momentum.
in a new iteration for the modern age. He made a YouTube video where he's calling out Christianity. And as I often think when I watch a Jordan Peterson video, I agree mostly with what he's saying. I get the logic. Like, I like what he's saying generally. He seems to understand the situation fairly well, where he's saying, like, modern day Christianity has a problem with young men where they don't like the masculinity of it, and it's kind of like been that way for a number of years. He compares modern day Christianity to Dolores Umbridge, and like Dolores Umbridge is so strict against all forms of nuisance, like the kind of nuisance that comes from masculinity. Like, somebody like this podcast that I'm doing is kind of ignorant to femininity, I would argue. It's masculine to say a bunch of fun things that are somewhat, that aren't like factual, but I'm just on my own bullshit. Like, to talk shit, it's masculine. I'm not saying it's manly. I'm saying it's masculine, and it is important to separate these two things. It is ignorant of femininity to say that you can just sit here and say all of these things, because femininity is more about the collective. That is the feminine viewpoint. And so I'm saying making a solo podcast is already an affront to femininity itself. And Jordan Peterson in this video compares Christianity to,
That was wonderfully done.
he's like, you're acting like Dolores Umbridge, where Dolores Umbridge has no time or patience for alternative narratives, or I mean, like, masculine things. And he basically says that the antidote is for churches to put on their signs out front that they are welcoming to young men. Like, he's saying Christian churches need to say that they are opening their doors to young men and they want to hear them and listen to them. He's like, this is what needs to change about Christianity. But then he takes an aside and addresses all of the disenfranchised Christian young men that he's talking about, where it's like he must have talked to a number of these people, young men that are disenfranchised from the Christian church, in order to build this case that he's building. And then, so like, he goes after the churches, then he goes after the young men that he's saying are disenfranchised from churches. I'm one of these young men that's disenfranchised from the Christian church. And it's like it became very evident that this message he's about to say, he's talking right to me, like this is right up my alley, like this totally applies to me. I am a disenfranchised Christian man. So I was like, I wonder what he's going to say. And then he said, I don't remember everything he said, but he said
Heading for the fairway.
he's basically saying that young men should go back into the church to join in with their belief system, because he said, who cares about your beliefs to
10th position.
young men? He's like, who cares what you believe? So it was weird to have Jordan Peterson say that to me. For all these years I admired him, but like I already know that that's true, that nobody cares what I believe. I've made 200, more than 200 podcast episodes, and they don't generate like millions of views like I thought might have happened, like, or at least thousands of views. I thought it would have been more popular at this point as long as I had made 200 videos, and so I have come to realize that nobody gives a shit about what I believe. That wasn't a shock to me. I'm just telling you this to say, Jordan Peterson and all of your pseudo-Christianity, and by the way, you didn't make a video that said a message to disenfranchised young Christian men. You made a video that said a message to Christianity. Jordan Peterson, you're not a Christian, so you don't get to speak on behalf of the Christian church to tell young men to come back into it. Like you're have your foot in both camps here. You like to get by saying that you're not necessarily a Christian, but you still get to speak for Christianity. Like Jordan Peterson makes his entire bill
That was
off
just
of
striped.
the idea that people care about his beliefs. So I guess beliefs is what I'm talking about today. And Jordan Peterson, who cares about what you believe? Why would I care about your version of pseudo-Christianity? Why don't I get to spew pseudo-Christianity, but you get to? But just because the world doesn't know that you pretend to be a Christian but you're not, or whatever, just because the world perceives you to be everybody's dad? Who cares about what you believe, since you're somebody who's pro-individualism to the grave?
For the three.
Why do you get to spew your own shit, but I don't? Anyway, then, I guess I'm talking about beliefs.
Handy effort, that one. And this punt for a share of the lead.
Beliefs, or just belief itself. I don't know. That's the theme. I mean, I have to summarize it as something. But why is it the beliefs? Like, that's what's interesting, though. That's what stood out to me, is that he said, who cares what you believe? This is something I was already thinking about. Just maybe I hadn't put it in those exact words. It's true. Nobody cares what I believe as an individual on my own shit. It doesn't, like, I haven't plugged myself into the default network that everybody else is plugged into. Like, for example, everybody is living on Jesus' dime because that's how all of time transpires, is 2022 is 2022 years after Jesus. And you make something in the world, it's kind of like plugged into the network of Christ, like it's a cartridge you're plugging into that console. Like all of the programming that happens in the earth, you'll do well if you're not... Like, it's all plugged into Christ in some way, like the same way that all of the programming that happens on NBC, all of those separate shows are plugged into the NBC network. NBC network is a console. It is like my beliefs don't matter because they're too individualized. That is true. That doesn't, and also, but what I'm telling you now is that it's still valid and there is still a place for it. It's just kind of a more masculine side of things. That doesn't make it right, because, like, you make a solo podcast, I would say that you're risking being ignorant to the feminine side, like the complete opposite side, enough that it almost becomes invalid. But, I mean, as long as you're aware enough. it's not like my beliefs are so shitty. It's not like there's not a place for individual beliefs. It's not like there's not a place to try to create your own network for people to plug their thing onto. Not that that's what I'm trying to do.
This line look like
But
Heads up here, guys. I don't know which way this one's going to come out of this.
I mean, I am organizing a Capitol storming for all of us listening. So if you want to like meet me downtown, I'll be in Columbus so we can organize that. Like I am trying to start one of those, but so meet me at our spot. You know the spot. Meet me at our spot, like that song. Wow, I feel really exasperated right now. I'm just gonna end. Thanks for listening to that. Talk to you all later.